So here we are talking to Nigel. You've just given out a lot of long service awards.
Absolutely, yeah.
They must have added up to a fairly high total of years.
Yeah, I mean, we're just saying maybe 300 or 400 years in total, and of course that's not all of our volunteers as well. So just to sort of years which we mark 5, 10, 15, 20, 25, etc. So yeah, we have about 500-600 volunteers across the organisation. Some who volunteer regularly, some who just come in for a few hours now and then. But it's, I think the really important thing for me about volunteers in a place like Mountbatten is that they reflect the community that we live in. So when people come here for care, whether it's people at the end of life or families from bereavement, they actually see themselves. And I think that's really important for people to feel at ease, to feel comfortable, to feel part of something. So it's really important that our volunteers reflect that local community. I think one of the things we really need to pay attention as we go forward is how we attract more younger people to come into volunteering. And we are doing that to some extent with the sixth form colleges, with the Isle of Wight College and so forth. But actually, young people die as well. And we have our children's services here, and I think for families and younger people to come in and see their peers around the place is really important. So that reflection to the local community is really critical. And I think realising that, of course, yes, volunteers give us their time and skills, but they give so much more than that. They help people feel at ease, they help people feel comfortable in a place that most people feel afraid of because of what we're about.
And what do the volunteers, what typically do the volunteers do?
So a range of things really. I think people are surprised to hear how many different things volunteers do. So, just as an aside, we have our 10 shops across the island, of course, which wouldn't be able to open without our volunteers. And in the last year, they've had a bumpy year financially. So again, those volunteers out there in the shops reflecting Mountbatten's values, what we're about, being able to give the right messages, the right information is really critical. So the shops are one area. Walk the Wight, which has been a phenomenon this year. I still don't quite understand it, but today 530,000 income, 350 volunteers on that day from across the island, and many of those volunteers will only do that. That's their thing for the year, and it's really important. So they're marshals, they're standing, helping people, they're giving out medals, helping people have conversations, that kind of thing. So really important. But then as an organisation, we have more stable volunteer roles. So volunteers who come in and help with patients and families, particularly around making sure they're comfortable, making sure they've got cups of tea when they need them. One of the things I always say when people thank us for what we do, we get lots of letters. People never thank us for the expert pain management or the expert psychological support. They thank us for somebody making them a cup of tea and giving them a blanket at the right time, making sure they're comfortable, making sure they're looking after themselves. And that's what our volunteers do in spades. And that level, which people talk about those things as being the small things, don't they? But actually they're the things that make this organisation what it is. Because without them, we would just be another organisation struggling to get along and do our job. But those things help in so many different ways in terms of making people feel welcome and comfortable. We have volunteers in our cafe. We have volunteers who we train to support bereaved families. So there's lots of opportunities for different kinds of people. And I always make sure I'm involved in volunteer training because I think it's important. But people are always surprised at what is available. The biggest growing group, the growing need, is having volunteers who can go and visit people at home, particularly people who are lonely, people who live alone with no family, no informal care. Mountbatten carers, our nurses, go in, but they can't be there all day. But a volunteer maybe who can knock on the door, check there's food in the fridge, check the electricity is working, check that their drugs have been picked up from the pharmacy, take them out for a walk, keeping them part of that community. That's where we need more and more volunteers.
And do you need any special skills to do that or experience?
No, I think it's people, it's not for everyone. Some people don't feel confident knocking on the door and maybe spending that kind of time with people. But what we say to people is trying to find people in local communities who are already embedded in that community, who may know of individuals already. So a kind of befriending network, if you like. And we offer support to those people training. They know what to do if something's wrong. They know who to ring, that kind of thing. So we make sure people have the kind of wherewithal to manage visiting people like that. But it isn't for everyone. But there are a group of people out there, I think, who would really benefit for themselves from doing that kind of thing.
Yeah. And where, sorry. So, how do people get in touch if they'd like to become a volunteer?
Yeah. So I guess two ways. One is on our website. There's an application form. So if people go onto our website, they can find the form and apply. If that is not possible for some people, just to ring the hospice and say I'd like to volunteer, they'll put them through to the right person and talk with them.
And you said that Walk the Wight has, I think, doubled the amount of income from 2 years ago?
Yeah, so 2 years ago, normally we'd sort of settled at around a 250,000 income from Walk the Wight for the last 10 years since I've been here. And last year it went up to 460,000. Of course, that puts pressure because you think, well, can we do that again, or is that a blip? Is it a one-off thing? But this year it's at 530 and probably will go up more because for the next 6 months money will still come in. So something quite extraordinary is happening. And I think at a time when life is so challenged for most people on this island, people want to do something good.
Yeah.
So there's a kind of reaction against how life is. I think also, Mountbatten, hopefully, we've become a lot more present in people's lives and a lot more kind of relevant, even if people are not at the end of life, but to get people thinking about it, to get, because we are all going to need this place. And we know to avoid us dealing with crisis every time someone comes to us, giving people a responsibility to plan early, to think in advance can be really useful and really helpful. So I think that's had an impact as well. So yeah.
And your funding troubles with the NHS have been rather well publicised. Do you see any end to those? I know we're in a very sensitive period, so I'm not asking you to...
No, I mean obviously I wouldn't give a political view, but so we get a third of our funding from the NHS, 2/3 from the community. So it's really important to understand our biggest relationship is with our community, and they own this organisation. But nonetheless, the NHS gives us about 3.5 million a year. The problem at the moment, twofold. One is the NHS are looking to cut funding because of the state of the way things are. And I do understand that. I understand they need to look at their funding as being spent in the right way. But on 3.5 million a year, there's a 10% increase in terms of cost of living, pay awards, all kinds of things, and they don't give us that. So over the last 10 years, it's just gone down. And I don't think we can sit down and say that we can continue to fill that with charitable income anymore. The NHS have a responsibility. We provide services on their behalf, but they get 2/3 more than what they pay for. Because our community are there doing that. So, we're a lot more bang for your buck really with an organisation like this. It's hard to know where that will come down and how it will work out. We don't yet know, but it's not an easy position to be in. And what we don't want to do is be critical of the NHS because it's an extraordinary institution. But at the moment, I think it's so stretched and challenged, it's really hard to see what the future will be.
Yeah, well, hopefully whoever comes out victorious at the end will be a doughty champion for the NHS and the hospice, because we all need you, sadly, at some time. Yeah,
absolutely. And that's the thing, isn't it?
But it's a day really to celebrate the volunteers who make such a difference.
They do, they absolutely do.
Do you have any volunteers in your garden? Because it's a beautiful
we
garden.
do, completely done by volunteers, our garden. So it's being opened in a few weeks as part of the Royal Garden Society kind of annual national thing. So they're getting ready for that to make sure it's looking sort of top notch. But they're amazing, really.
Well, thank you very much. It's been lovely to be here and
well, you're very welcome.
See your volunteers enjoying themselves.
Yeah, thank you.
Bye-bye. Thank you for all you do.